Manure is one of the oldest fertilizers on Earth, yet most modern growers barely tap a fraction of its potential. We're taught to fear it fresh, rush it into compost piles, or dilute it into something weak and safe. Ancient farmers took a very different approach. They understood that manure was not just fertilizer, but a living, volatile material that needed to be transformed before it touched the soil. When cured correctly, manure didn't burn crops, stink up fields, or leach nutrients away. It became a powerful soil activator that could restore exhausted land in a single season. That curing trick is largely forgotten, and once you understand it, manure will never look the same again. Ancient farmers knew manure was too powerful to use raw. Fresh manure is, well, unstable. It's high in nitrogen, loaded with salts, and honestly, it's biologically aggressive. Ancient growers learned pretty quickly that spreading it raw caused crop damage, weed explosions, and, not to mention, nutrient loss. But instead of abandoning manure altogether, they refined it. They discovered that manure had to be calmed before it could really be trusted. This wasn't about aging it indefinitely, you know. It was about controlled transformation. The ancient trick was curing manure through low-oxygen fermentation. Rather than just letting manure rot in open piles, ancient farmers cured it in ways that kept oxygen to a minimum. Manure was packed, moistened and covered, sometimes mixed with soil, ash, straw or plant residue. This shifted decomposition away from burning heat and toward fermentation. In this state, nitrogen stayed bound instead of volatilizing. Pathogens declined, salts mellowed, and what emerged was not compost, but something, well, closer to a biological concentrate. Now, you might be wondering why curing is actually better than composting when it comes to manure. Well, composting manure generates a lot of heat. Sure, that heat is great for killing off pathogens, but you see, it also has a downside. The heat tends to drive off nitrogen and unfortunately collapses the diversity of microbes that are so important for healthy soil. On the other hand, cured manure manages to hold on to its nutrients, all while transforming them into forms that are safe and useful for plants. Ancient farmers really understood the value of this approach, since manure was a precious resource for them. It just didn't make sense to lose half of it into the air. By curing, they were able to preserve fertility rather than sacrificing it. If we look back through history, we can see that civilizations all over the world made use of cured manure. Roman agricultural records, for example, talk about manure pits that were sealed with clay. In East Asia, farmers would ferment manure together with plant residues and a bit of ash. Indigenous communities across the globe buried manure under layers of soil, letting it mellow before using it. Interestingly, all these cultures, working independently, reached the same conclusion. Manure is at its best when it's transformed slowly, away from the air, and returned to the soil full of life. Now, let me explain how the curing process actually works on a biological level. When we cure manure in low oxygen conditions, we encourage special microbes to get to work. These microbes convert harsh nitrogen compounds into stable ammonium forms. Instead of washing away, These ammonium compounds bind to organic matter. As this happens, harmful bacteria decline, while beneficial decomposers multiply. The end result is manure that's biologically compatible with soil life, rather than disruptive to it. When you apply this cured manure, it feeds the soil microbes first, and the plants second, which is honestly exactly how fertility should work. So, how can you apply this ancient curing trick today? Well, start with fresh or semi-fresh manure from herbivores. Mix that with a carbon material like straw, leaves or even old bedding. Moisten the mix until it's damp, but not soaking wet. Then pack it tightly into a container, pit or pile, and cover it completely with soil, a tarp or a thick layer of organic matter to keep the air out. Let it cure for anywhere from 1 to 3 months, depending on the temperature. When the process is finished, the manure should have an earthy smell, not a sharp one. Apply it thinly to the surface of your soil or incorporate it just shallowly, don't bury it deep. This cured manure won't burn your plants, and it'll get your soil life going quickly. Now, let's talk about the practical results that growers actually see. Soils treated with cured manure darken and soften within just a few weeks. Crops show stronger early growth, but without that excessive leafy surge. Clay soils loosen up, while sandy soils start holding on to nutrients for longer. You'll also notice that weed pressure drops, because the nutrients are bound rather than floating free. This is manure working exactly as ancient farmers intended. So, why did modern agriculture move away from this method, you might wonder? Well, industrial farming started to prioritize speed and uniformity above all else. Synthetic fertilizers, you see, began to replace the need for biological understanding altogether. And, to be honest, composting became safer and much easier to standardize for large-scale operations. The curing method, folks, it really demands attention and judgment rather than just following recipes. That made it, well, incompatible with large-scale mechanization, but it certainly wasn't ineffective. Now let's talk about how this method fits into modern soil systems. Cured manure, when paired with compost and mulch, works exceptionally well. Compost, builds structure in the soil. Cured manure delivers immediate biological energy. Together, they actually replicate those ancient fertility systems that managed to feed entire populations without causing soil collapse. And let me be clear, this isn't nostalgia talking. It's functional knowledge, plain and simple. Here's what ancient farmers understood that, honestly, many modern growers have forgotten. They knew manure is not just waste, it's unfinished fertility. If you treat it gently, it becomes one of the most powerful soil tools available. But if you rush it or mishandle it, well, it quickly turns into a liability. The difference, my friends, is curing. So, if this kind of grounded, time-tested agricultural knowledge matters to you, go ahead and subscribe to Farm Logic. And, share this with growers who want real results without degrading their soil. These methods sustained agriculture long before modern inputs existed, and they still work today.